Studying life. What characteristics do all living things share? Living things are made up of basic units called cells. Living things are based on universal genetic code. And living things obtain and use materials and energy. Living things grow and develop. They reproduce. They respond to the environment. They maintain a stable internal environment. And they adapt to their surroundings. Biology is the study of life. But what is life? No single characteristic is enough to describe a living thing. Also, some non-living things share one or more traits with organisms. Some things, such as viruses, exist at the border between organisms and non-living things. Despite these difficulties, we can list characteristics that most living things have in common. For example, both fish and coral show all the characteristics common to living things. So living things are based on universal genetic code. All organisms store the complex information they need to live, grow, and reproduce in a genetic code written in their molecular DNA. This information is copied and passed from parent to offspring and is almost identical for each organism on Earth. They grow and they develop, and then they grow old and die. During development, a single fertilized egg divides again and again. As these cells divide, they differentiate, which means they begin to look different from one another and to perform different functions. So living things respond to their environment. A stimulus is a signal to which an organism responds, a bit like putting your hand on a burner. Yeah, you're going to respond. For example, some plants can produce unsavory chemicals to ward off caterpillars that feed on their leaves. Living things reproduce, which means they produce new similar organisms. Most plants and animals engage in sexual reproduction, in which cells from two parents unite to form the first cell of a new organism. That first cell will then divide and then specialize to make the whole body of their child. So this is genetics, to get the joke. Other organisms reproduce through asexual reproduction, in which a single organism produces offspring identical to itself. It's not you, it's me. So the question, are orange tree blossoms part of a tree's cycle of sexual or asexual reproduction? Living things maintain a relatively stable internal environment, even when external conditions change dramatically. All living organisms expend energy to keep conditions inside their cells within certain limits, temperature limits, as shown in the picture. This condition process is called homeostasis. Living things obtain and use material and energy to grow, develop, and reproduce. The combination of chemical reactions through which an organism builds up or breaks down material is called metabolism. For example, leaves obtain energy from the sun and gases from the air. These materials then take part in various metabolic reactions within leaves. Living things are made up of one or more cells, the smallest unit considered fully alive. Cells can grow, respond to their surroundings, and reproduce. Despite their small size, cells are complex and highly organized. For example, a single branch of a tree contains millions of cells. The theory of evolution links all form of life to a common origin. Do we have a common end? How do different fields of biology differ in their approach to studying life? Biology includes many overlapping fields that use different tools to study life, from the level of molecules to the entire planet. Life on Earth is shaped by weather patterns and processes in the atmosphere that we are just beginning to understand. Activities of living organisms, including humans, affect the atmosphere and climate. Global ecological studies are enabling us to learn about our global impact, which affects all life on Earth. For example, an ecologist may monitor lichens in a forest in an effort to study the effects of air pollution on forest health. Biologists have discovered and identified roughly 1.8 million different kinds of living organisms. And researchers estimate that somewhere between 2 and 100 million more forms of life are waiting to be discovered around the globe. Most are insects. And also, paleontologists study signs of ancient life, even fossilized dinosaur dung and the bugs that were contained in it. In addition to identifying and cataloging all these forms of life, biologists aim to combine the latest genetic information with technology to organize all living things into a single universal tree of life and put the results in a form that anyone can access. The relationship between hosts and pathogens are dynamic and constantly changing. Organisms that cause human disease have their own ecology, which involves our bodies, medicines, and our interactions with each other and the environment. Understanding these interactions is important to safeguarding our future. For example, a wildlife biologist studies a group of wild gelada baboons. Pathogens in wild animal populations may change to infect humans. Pathogens in wild animal populations have changed to infect humans. These fields focus on studies of DNA and their molecules inside cells. Genomics is now looking at the entire set of DNA code contained in a wide range of organisms. Computer analysis enabled researchers to compare vast databases of genetic information in search of keys to the mysteries of growth, development, aging, cancer, and the history of life on Earth. The field of biotechnology is based on our ability to edit or rewrite the genetic code. We may soon learn to correct or replace damaged genes that cause inherited diseases or genetically engineer bacteria to clean up toxic waste. Biotechnology raises enormous ethical, legal, and social questions. One example of this is combining a glowworm with the genes of a cat. This cat on the left glows in the dark. What is the metric system and why is it important? Most scientists use the metric system when collecting data and performing experiments. The reason for that is because the unit conversion for higher order units is much easier, like power, energy. These are common between electricity, magnetism, gravity. Most scientists use the metric system when collecting data and performing experiments. The metric system is a decimal system of measurement whose units are based on certain physical standards and are scaled on multiples of 10. So the common metric units are length, mass, volume, temperature. And for length, it's 1 meter. For mass, gram. Volume is in liter, and temperature is in Celsius. The basic unit of length, the meter, can be multiplied or divided to measure objects of distances much larger or smaller than a meter. The same process can be used when measuring volume and mass. For example, scientists in Alaska want to measure the mass of a polar bear. What unit of measurement should the scientists use to express the mass? Whenever you work in your biology laboratory, you must follow safety practices. Before you start each activity, read all the steps and make sure that you understand the entire procedure, including any safety precautions. Most importantly, always follow the teachers and class safety instructions. Carol never wore her safety goggles. She said YOLO instead. Because you may come in contact with organisms you cannot see, it is essential that you wash your hands thoroughly after every scientific activity. Wearing appropriate protective gear is also important while working in the laboratory.